So here's the thing. Apple challenged us to think different. Nike encouraged people, regardless of age, gender, or physical fitness ability, to just do it. And then Dunkin' Donuts persuaded us busy professionals that American runs on Dunkin'. I'm a believer, right? Every day I have to have my Dunkin'. Well, over the years, all of these companies have kind of developed these recognizable slogans that have become their rallying cries. In just a handful of words, these slogans have told a story and they've influenced how people perceive the organizations behind them. But this is the thing. Branding is what companies stand for. But today, branding isn't just for companies. Personal branding is for professionals to tell their own story, to talk about their own unique value, their attributes, their characteristics, and their strengths. So what is personal branding? Personal branding is a communication strategy for relaying your identity to the outside world. It answers that question of what's so special about you anyway. Your personal brand is essentially your reputation. It is about bringing who you are and what you do and how you do it to any experience. It's about making your mark by being yourself, but not just being yourself. It's about being your best self. So think of your personal brand as your calling card. It's your own unique promise of value. It's what you're known for, and it's how people experience you. So when building personal brands, there are lots of different factors to think about. First thing you want to think about, what are the unique skill sets? What are the skills? What are the attributes that you bring to an organization? The other thing that you might want to think about is, are you choosing a career path that's right for you? You also want to think about what it is that you want to be known for. The other thing you really need to give some thought about is what is going to make you in particular stand out to potential employers. This is especially important as employers may spend as little to 5 to 10 seconds reviewing any resume. That is not a lot of time. Recruiters are going to decide within that first 1 to 2 minutes of meeting you as to whether or not they want to continue with the conversation. In today's marketplace, it's really tough to stand out. So getting good grades, being in lots of extracurricular activities, volunteering, some of those things might not be enough. So you have to make sure that we are really doing all the work on the back end to prepare to make sure that we're developing the strongest personal brand that we can potentially put out there. So what goes into developing a personal brand? There are lots of different things. We need to think about appearance. We need to think about unique abilities. We need to think about our resume. So all of the different experiences that we have to be able to speak to and to pull from. We need to think about our values and our goals. And we even need to think about how we behave in the workplace. These are all really, really important things, but one of the things I want to kind of give you pause to think about is also how we appear, how we behave in public. One of the stories I was telling some of my colleagues the other day was about a student that I had many years ago that had been trying to land an interview in a particular school district, and she could not get her foot in the door. Well, one day she went in to get a pedicure, literally, foot in the door, right? And she's sitting next to this woman talking about her experience as a student from Concordia, because this is during my time when I was a director at Concordia. And she was speaking to the woman next to her. She told her about the experience she had as a student, about her passion to work with this particular school district. And it turned out that the woman she was sitting right next to happened to be the superintendent for the school district. So I think this is a really prime example of no matter where you go, you need to think about exuding a professional presence and think about your appearance and think about your behavior and how you're interacting with others outside of the workplace and just in your personal life from day to day. So one of the things I always tell people is building a network is not one of those things that's going to get you the job, right? But it might get you looked at. So for the instance of this student, just having that interaction with that person and making it such a positive interaction, she ended up getting the interview. She didn't get the job, but she got the interview. And that's half the battle, is just getting your foot in the door to get looked at. So thinking about all of these things and how they fit into developing a personal brand are all going to be really, really important things to think about. Appearance. So dress attire and grooming are all things we need to think about. Know your audience when it comes to dress attire and grooming. Business casual shouldn't be business careless. So if you're not sure about what the attire is, make sure that you dress at least one level above. Focus on quality, fit, fabrics, and think about your wardrobe selection. Also use accessories to convey your personality, but avoid things like big clunky jewelry, too much cologne. People have allergies, right? Maybe things that are too loud, too many prints. And I think this is important too, because one of the things you never want to do is to detract from what it is that you're saying. I also recall so many times sitting on search committees, and I remember one instance in particular in which a woman came in, she had her doctorate, she had a great resume, but when she came in with very loud colors, busy fabrics, and very, very bold jewelry. It's all I could think about the entire search committee. And I could not think about any of her skills. I couldn't think of any of her strengths. Nothing she was telling me was really sinking in, because in the back of my mind as a director of career services, all I could think of was, oh my gosh, who told this woman to wear this suit? Who told this woman to wear this big jewelry? Who told this woman to wear these loud colors, right? I know that's the director of career services in me, but all I could think about were these things, and it completely detracted from the woman's experience. So really think about these things when you are making decisions, because we want to make sure that we are always projecting a professional presence. And you always have to remember that you never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? So very, very important to think about. So your behavior, your demeanor, your outward appearance, all of those things are going to impact how others see you. So think about these things. Dressing for an interview, it's not rocket science, right? But if you think about it as an afterthought, if you plan last minute, it can really hurt you in the long run. So make sure that you show up prepared, that your outfit makes you look very well put together. It shows that you have got your act together. If you're applying for a position at an executive or a managerial or a CEO level, make sure that you wear a suit. And if you're applying for another position in which maybe it's more of a casual role, you might not have to wear a complete suit, but make sure that you look professional. Make sure that you're dressing crisp. Okay, no jeans, no chinos, no holes, no lint, no tears in your pants. So really think about this. Matching your socks to your shoes, very important, right? That can be a distraction as well. So thinking ahead on some of these things are going to be important. And then there's also the resume and the cover letter. So it's important to think about the resume and the cover letter as your physical written representation of who you are. Really, really important to think about these things. We also need to make sure that our resume and our cover letter are speaking to one another. And I know that might sound silly, but when we apply for a job, it's really important that when we submit credentials for the positions that we're applying for, that it's very clear we've done our homework, that it stands out that we're interested in that position in particular. A lot of times I think that we tend to skip steps or take shortcuts, especially because I believe applying for a job feels like a full-time job. For those of you that have looked for positions, yep, Stacey's like, yes, it does, right? So sometimes it feels like a full-time job, and it's hard to find the time to dedicate to doing all of the work. But it's really, really important to do all of the work. When you find yourself in that interview and somebody says, why do you want to work for our organization? I remember many years ago asking that of a candidate for a position, and the response was, I just need a job. That probably could have been the worst response that he could have given to make a first impression on his personal brand. Because at the end of the day, people don't want to hire people who just need a job. They want to hire people who are passionate about doing the work within their organizations. They want to hire people who have the same vision and the same mission and the same desire to meet the goals of their organization. And that's what needs to be conveyed in that cover letter. So it's really important to not just provide this cookie cutter response, but to do the work and to do the research and to show that you have actually put in the time to connect your resume back to your cover letter. They should speak to each other in essence. So your cover letter should really speak to the resume, to the experiences that you've done in the resume. And I'm also going to pull out another anecdotal story. I'm going to do this throughout the night, so get used to it, right? Because I think it's important to hear from experience. I had a candidate that had applied for a career counseling position. On paper, it was beautiful. She looked like she had done some really great things. I'm reading through the cover letter, and it said that she had a strong background in assessment. Now, she took it one step further and she reached out to me via email. She even did a follow-up phone call to touch base with me. Now, the thing that I had issue with is normally I wouldn't have taken the time to go and specifically look at her credentials as she's passing through a search committee first. But because of the fact that she had reached out personally, I felt like I needed to really take a look at her specifically and look at some of her credentials. And so when I went to look at them, I saw that she had everything I was looking for based on the cover letter, but when I opened up her resume, it didn't speak to the cover letter. So while one of the important required credentials needed was a background in assessment, and she even said she had the background in assessment in the cover letter, it wasn't noted or detailed anywhere in her resume. And the sad part is that she was applying for a career counseling position. So immediately, even though she had, what looked like the complete package, she knew to follow up, she knew to reach out via email, she knew to really cover all of her bases to make herself known, she forgot this one important element. And for me, that was critical, because if she missed a step for herself, how was she going to help students to make sure they weren't making missteps on their own? So for me, that was a game changer. And that took her completely out of the running, even though she had really followed up and seemed really engaged about the position. So I think this just goes to show how one small element missing something can really take you out of the game. It's the same with your grammar. It's the same with your spelling. You have to make sure that the entire package is precise, that it speaks to one another, that it speaks to the value that you bring, that it speaks to your level of professionalism. So really think about these things when you're putting all of these different elements together. Your resume should also tell a story. Okay, this is all about your experience. So we need to be able to tell this story about how good your experience truly is. You need to be able to answer questions like, when did you exhibit leadership? What accomplishments are you most proud of? When did you set a goal for yourself that you achieved? And also addressing gaps in your experience, just as much as knowing how to speak to your skill sets, you have to be able to address deficits or address gaps and things like that in your resume as well. And then how well can you talk about your experience? I include the when have you failed piece because this is a question that always seems to snag people up. I remember giving a presentation on interviewing many years ago. It was Debbie Halverson when she was a senator. I think it was a senator. She did a job boot camp, and it was right around the fallout of the market. I think it was around 2008. People were losing their jobs, people were losing their homes, and we decided to do this job boot camp. And I had a gentleman that showed up for the interview workshop that I was hosting, and I came to this question in particular, of being able to address when have you failed during the interview. And I remember him specifically because he raised his hand and he said, Ms. Campos, this is a question I've been asked in my last 3 interviews, and I just don't know how to answer it. And I said, well, did you get any job offers based off of those 3 interviews? And he said, well, no, I didn't get a job offer. I said, did you follow up with a career services professional or go back and research it and kind of figure out how you should have answered it? Well, no, I didn't do that either. I just knew the next time I got asked it, I was like, oh, there's that question again. It got me again, you know? I said, but you allowed yourself to do it 3 times. And so when I went back and I asked him how he actually addressed that question, he focused on something that was more of a deficit, like a character deficit, right? Something that we can't really go back and fix. So I told him, I said, when you're speaking to a question like, when have you failed? You want to be able to look at something that may be a project that you put in place that maybe fell short a little bit, something that there was room for improvement. Because at the end of the day, employers want to know that we are able to admit when we fall short, but we also have the ability to take the responsibility for our actions when we do fall short, right? Something that's not necessarily a character flaw, but something that we can really look at, we can hone in on, make some changes, implement some things in the future to make a program better. So that made more sense to him, and I'm hoping, I never heard from him after that point in time, but I'm hoping, you know, once we had that conversation that he went back and he thought about it, and he thought about a project that he could make some improvements upon, and he got that next job offer. But this is a really one that I want people to think about, because I think there's opportunity for growth in all that we do. So being able to talk to those things, I think, are also important elements that speak to your personal brand and speak to you as a professional and your ability to make improvements and to push forward. There's also the element of our behavior, right? Workplace etiquette. We've all seen the person in the Hall of Honors or the CPA or wherever it may be. Sometimes it might even be us, right? That are on our phone, taking messages, whatever that may be. And it might not be the most opportune time to do that, right? And other people may be watching us. So we need to think about the behaviors that we exhibit in the workplace, whether it be checking our phones during meetings, showing up late, gossip, spreading rumors, dropping the ball at work, not being actively engaged, missing deadlines, doing the bare minimum to get by. None of these things are going to help us to advance as professionals. We have to determine who we want to be within the workplace. And my best advice is to be a solution seller. I think it's fine to point out problems as long as you can also back it up with how to fix a problem. Be a solution seller in an organization, because those are always going to be needed. We'll never run out of room for solution sellers. Also think about the language that we're using. Language, jokes, spelling, grammar, punctuation. I talked about that in the resume. That's going to convey against any platform that you're looking at. I can tell you probably half a dozen times when I've taught a class and I've received an email from a student that literally from the beginning to the end was like a text message from a friend. LOL, TIA, and I, you know, being older, I was like, I had to figure out some of this stuff. What is TIA? Oh, thanks in advance, right? So I had to think about some of this stuff, but I shouldn't have had to think about it, because it should never have been addressed to a faculty member in such a laissez-faire way that didn't seem important. So think about how we're reaching out, think about how we're communicating, think about proper communication channels. I think that's important too. If you have a problem with your boss, you need to go to your boss about it. Don't go to your boss's boss, right? Because now you're going to burn your bridge with your boss and we're going to have difficulty moving forward. So think about some of those things and how it could contribute to building your brand. So I want you to think for a minute about what is your value proposition, okay? I want you to think about your own skill sets. Think about your own attributes. I also want you to think about your colleagues. I want you to think about the other students in your classes. I want you to think about the people that you're competing for advancements for at work. I want you to think about people with similar backgrounds as far as education that you'll be competing for opportunities in the workplace. And then I want you to think again about your value proposition. It is really, really important that you figure out now who you are and what sets you apart, because it's going to be a really important factor for you down the line. Because as I mentioned earlier, You're going to be competing for opportunities against people with very similar profiles, similar education, similar volunteerism, similar experience, and you're going to need to be able to pair up what sets you apart. Has anybody taken the StrengthsFinder assessment? Yay! Okay. So this is one of the things I would advise you to think about. We do offer it for free in the Office of Career Services. It's a great assessment tool. It's going to help you to hone in on your top 5 natural talents. Our top 5 natural talents out of 34 different themes of talent. And the idea behind StrengthsFinder is that you now take those 5 natural talents and you do the work behind what is needed to be done to make those strengths. I think a lot of times we know what we do well, but having the language and being able to talk about it effectively can be difficult for a lot of people. So I think if you're willing to at least spend the 45 minutes needed to take the online assessment, spending an hour or 2 with a career counselor to dig deep into it and to really see what it says about you is going to help you to convey a strong personal brand, both in writing, online, and in person. It's going to help you to basically design the narrative that is needed to be able to talk about what sets you apart from your colleagues. It's going to allow you to have the narrative to be able to speak to what makes you unique. Speak to how you can assist an organization, how you can help them grow, how you can help them navigate their own problems, how you can help them to increase revenue, how you can help them to expand their customer base. You will have the language needed to be able to convey that message in a much stronger capacity than you would have if you had not taken it. So I really encourage you to consider taking that. And again, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. If you want to email me after this to find out more information, I'm happy to do that. I can set you up with an appointment and I can send you the link to take the assessment. So my email is dcampos@govst.edu. So I'm happy to send you some information on that. But very, very important to think about the skill sets that you bring, to think about those things, because you're going to have to make sure that you are recognizing what is special, what is unique, and what sets you apart from the other talent. Other important elements, you have to think about your goals and your values. All of this comes together to create the package of who you are and the value that you bring to the organization. I love Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, because one of the things he says is begin with the end in mind. Think about where you want to be 5 years from now. If you can envision where you are 5 years from now, then you're going to be able to create a plan and to put steps in place needed to be able to achieve that goal, to find yourself in a promotion or with a degree or whatever that goal looks like for yourself. But if you can begin with the end in mind and determine what your outcome is going to look like, then you can put all of the different pieces in place needed to be able to achieve and to be successful. Along with the strengths assessment, we do have other assessments in the Office of Career Services. I know you guys are in graduate programs. A lot of you already know what it is that you want to do with your life, with your degree, but we can help you to create basically other opportunities to take a look at different employers that you can engage with, to determine where you should be submitting applications, really helping you to navigate, I guess, that application and the employment terrain. We can assist you with that. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is another assessment that we do. I think it's an excellent assessment. It helps you to learn a little bit about your personality type and how you work within organizations and with others in your own teams and your own organizations, and why you might basically need to bend a little when you work with somebody else who might not be exactly like you, right? And how we should appreciate differences and appreciate the unique value that we bring to an organization being different. Seeking out additional experience, I think, is also very important. I think that's going to help you to also create a strong personal brand because it's going to help you to expand your network. It's going to help you to expand your resume. It's going to push you outside of your comfort zone a little bit. I would encourage you guys to consider doing informational interviews. So essentially spending 20 to 30 minutes grabbing coffee or doing a Zoom call with somebody that holds the position that you desire, right? Having a chance to tap them for their own advice. What advice would they give a new professional? What would they have done differently? What are the pros and the cons of their position? What are things that you should know about trends that are changing the landscape of the work that is happening on the ground floor of your desired occupation? Really tapping in and honing into some of those things is important, and it's going to help you to build your network, which can, again, sometimes open doors for you. Might not necessarily get you the job. That's going to be up to you to really do the work and to prepare for the interview, but sometimes it can open a door to get looked at. And I think that that's an important element to remember. And then comes this whole concept of building what's called a branding toolkit. So your brand does no good to you if nobody knows about it, right? So we need to think about what are the elements that I need to be putting together now that is going to push out my brand. I included lots of different things in here. We'll talk about some of these things, but whether or not it's an elevator pitch, really developing strong networking skills, I think are very important. We talked about the importance of the resume and the cover letter. LinkedIn is a very, very useful tool to kind of push out a professional profile and a professional presence about your experience online. Today we've got Instagram, and we have TikTok, and we have Snapchat, and all of these other social media outlets that are going to allow you to push out information about who you are and your experience. We've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, things as simplistic even as your email address and your voicemail go together to create a brand. And the reason I kind of pull these things up is because these are important elements to think about when you're attaching an email address to a business card, when you're attaching your LinkedIn profile to your signature and your emails. I have seen many resumes come by my desk with really inappropriate emails. I won't even tell you what some of them are because they're really inappropriate, right? So I'm like, wow, I can't believe you would put that on your resume and apply for a job. And the other thing that is a huge pet peeve for me personally is when you use an existing email address from an employer to apply for an opportunity for a new employer. Oh my gosh, you can't do that, right? Because that's going to tell the person that you were working on finding a new job while you're at work at your existing job. So use an email that is specifically for your job search, and it's 100% use for that. I would encourage you, anything that you apply for, to send yourself an email and a snapshot of what you applied for. I remember many, many years ago when I was a very naive, I won't even say, I was young. I wanted to break into higher education. I knew I had a desire to work in higher education, but I didn't know that much about career development theory. I didn't know that much about branding myself as a professional. And I was guilty of the cookie cutter resume, right? And the cookie cutter cover letter. And I mass sent them out to everyone. And I remember getting a phone call and being so excited because Joliet Junior College called me and they wanted to interview me for a position that I applied for. I was super excited. And then I went to their website and I pulled it up and the opportunity was gone. I could not tell you what I applied for. I was mortified because they wanted to interview me for the position, and I knew that I was going to burn a bridge. I knew enough to know I was going to burn a bridge if I had to actually come to the table with, could you tell me what that position was exactly that I applied for? Could you send me that job description? And I was mortified because I really wanted this opportunity. I was really excited about it, but I knew enough, like I said, to know that I was going to make myself look foolish. So I actually ended up sending them an email and I pulled myself out of the candidate pool. I told them that at this point in time, this wasn't going to be the right opportunity for me, and I pulled myself out completely from the applicant pool. But this was a huge learning curve for me, and it taught me a lot about the type of work that needed to be done on the back end when it came to applying for a position. So from there on out, I used the professional email. I sent every position that I had applied for, a snapshot of it to my email. I created a spreadsheet. So anytime I followed up with an employer, I noted the date and the time so I didn't harass anybody, right? because nobody likes the harasser either, the person who consistently calls. Like, okay, it's Betty again, and she's calling and she wants to know if we've hired or we started the interview process. You don't want to be that person either. So I really encourage you to think about creating some type of process to really navigate where you are in your search and the correspondence piece of that. The voicemail is equally important. I remember having a student that I found an excellent opportunity for an internship for. I was so excited. I called the student up, and I will admit it took me back to my college days, because I remember in the, what was it, mid-90s, you know, you did the voicemail with all of your roommates and you set it to music, and, you know, everybody's like, hey, it's Missy and it's Darcy and it's Jill and it's Friday night, we're going out, right? Mortified, because when I called this student, it was him and all of his friends and his roommates, and they're barking in the back. They're like, ruff, 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 ruff. You reached the dog pound, leave a message. I wanted to die, okay? Because I knew that I had this really killer opportunity for this student for a $20-some an hour paid internship. And I knew the employer was following up. And I knew the employer was going to reach the dog pound within a few hours. And I was real nervous about that. So thinking about things like that, even the voicemail is going to be important and really solidifying who you are as a professional. So thinking about those things. So I want to take just a minute. I want to show you 3 different elevator pitches. I think having an elevator pitch perfected and ready to go, whether or not you're at a job fair, if you're at an interview, if you actually physically catch yourself in the elevator with the CEO of a company or a corporation that you would like to land a position for, it's nice to have something to be able to pull from to talk to about your experiences. So I'm going to show you some samples. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. Share my web browser. All right. So this is University of Northern Colorado. Can you see the screen? Jason, can you see it? Thumbs up. Okay. Now give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. So this is their College of Business, and they actually did an elevator pitch competition. So this shows the first, second, and third places. I'm going to show you some samples so you can have an idea of what an effective elevator pitch looks like. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this. Can you hear that? You can't hear it? No? Okay. Well, that stinks. So if you can't hear, what I'm going to do, is I'm going to put a packet together, and I'm going to send it to the graduate assistant that's over the program, Giovanna, and she will send this out to anybody who would like a copy of this. So I will send you the link along with some tips for personal branding, tips to basically help you in this process. So I apologize, that's too bad. These are really good. I would encourage you to take a look at them when you have an opportunity to do so. So let me go back to the presentation here. And in a moment, we'll open it up and we'll have some conversation. Okay. Back to our toolkit. Okay. So essentially, an elevator pitch is going to help you to basically leave a powerful, positive first impression. So it's going to allow you to take a few minutes to talk about your goals, summarizing your experience. Basically, you want to practice it and refine it until it rolls off your tongue. It needs to seem natural, and it needs to be natural when you are implementing your elevator pitch. The other thing that I think is really important to think about is networking. Networking actually comprises of about 60 to 85% of all job offers. They actually result because of networking. So the job market is really, really tough. So it's really, really important to become connected, to make sure that we are broadening our connections and the relationships that we have on a wide scale. I think a great way to build your network is by utilizing profiles like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the largest social media profile online for professionals. Every Fortune 500 company is using LinkedIn, which I think is really good to know as well. And I think it's important to know that LinkedIn also factors in very high on Google Analytics. So the more that you use LinkedIn, the higher it's going to pop up in a Google search. How many of you have actually put your name into a search bar and searched yourself just to see what comes up, right? We've all done that. Gail's like, no, I haven't done that. But you're going to now, right? You're going to now. I think this is really important because I think you'd be really, really surprised at what pops up. I always tell people once it's out there in cyberspace, it lives forever, right? And sometimes we might pull up things that are less than favorable. Maybe we want to create this new persona on social media and we want opportunities to do that. LinkedIn is a great way to do it. It actually allows you the opportunity to solicit recommendations from people that you've worked with in a capacity, whether or not that be as a student faculty member capacity, as a work colleague, somebody maybe that you worked on a particular project with, where they can recommend you based on your skill sets and your attributes. It also gives opportunities for people to endorse you based on your experience and your expertise. And the nice thing about that is you get to choose what is visible on LinkedIn to the public. So you can choose to make your picture public, you can choose to make your name public, you can choose to make all of your recommendations and your endorsements public. I will tell you this, before somebody even calls you to see if they want to bring you in for an interview, they're going to Google your name because that is the world that we live in today. There's so much access at people's fingertips within a moment's notice at lightning speed where people can pull up and do their own investigative research on who you are. So it is important for you to recognize that you have this opportunity at your hand to really craft the narrative of how you want to be seen as a professional early on. So really think about those things and do those things. Who has a LinkedIn profile already? Yay! Love it, love it, love it. That's great. That's great. And a lot of people don't realize the depth and breadth of LinkedIn either. It's great for connecting with other groups. It's great to be able to contribute to other groups as a professional in your field. It's going to help to build your own personal brand by showing that you contribute to conversation and discussions and that you have expertise as well. It's going to help you to build your brand. It's also a great job database, right? I will say I never encourage students to pay for a LinkedIn account, but right around graduation time, if you start looking at the paid features, usually within 24 hours, they send you a 30-day free trial to use the LinkedIn upgrade. And the nice thing about the LinkedIn upgrade is that it starts to open up access to things that you normally wouldn't have access to. And one of those things is the salary field. So if you want to apply for a position online and you're not sure, what the starting salary is, it'll open that up for you so you can actually see prior to applying. It's also going to tell you how many people have applied for it. It's going to weigh your experience next to the others that have applied for it based on degree, based on geographics, location, all of that. It gives you a lot more information. So I would encourage you to consider that once you're graduating and thinking about entering the job market and using that as a tool to find employment. So consider that. When it comes to the interview, I think that that's also an important element to think about because the interview is also going to allow you an opportunity to brand yourself as a professional. So really making sure that you're able to answer some of those questions that are tough, being able to speak to your experience, being able to give examples of the things that you've done on projects, pulling from your experience to talk about how you would make contributions within their company, I think is going to be really, really crucial and important. And showing engagement. I think showing engagement in an interview is of critical importance. Eye contact, leaning in, making sure that you're not, standing closed off and you're not appearing to be uncomfortable. Making sure that you nod, head nod, smile. I can tell you half a dozen times when I've been in an experience interviewing somebody who literally just did not smile the entire time. And it made me uncomfortable because I'm a social person. I want to be engaged. I want people to be comfortable. And a smile says, I am happy to be here, right? I'm excited to be here. So don't hesitate to show a little bit of your personality when you're in that experience, because I think a lot of that goes a long way to showing engagement. Another critical piece for being engaged in an interview process is having questions at the end. And I know that can be difficult because a lot of times we go through this process, we end up at the end of the interview and we're like, okay, well, they really did answer everything that I needed to know. But if you don't have anything to ask of them, it's going to tell them you're not interested. And you may be interested, but make sure that you have a couple of questions to show that you are engaged. Very, very critical. So I want to open up, I know I've babbled for a long time. I want to open up the last 15 minutes so we can talk a little bit about questions that you have, and then I can leave you with some last minute tips on branding before you conclude the night. So who would like to open up the chat? Yes, Gail. Oh, can you unmute?
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, I have a question